After the ashes of Khal Drogo's funeral pyre settled, Daenerys stood in silence, her silver hair dancing gently in the desert wind. The three baby dragons clung to her shoulders, their tiny screeches echoing into the night. Everyone stared at her like she was a goddess, the mother of dragons reborn. But no one saw what she saw, just beyond the pyre, half buried in blackened ash and bone. It was small, no bigger than a child's skull, and pulsing with faint warmth. She bent down, brushing ash away with her hand. Her fingers trembled as she touched it, another dragon egg. Its surface was rough, covered in dark crimson and silver scales, glowing ever so slightly. Her breath caught. 4! There were 4! And this one was different. She didn't say anything at first. She wrapped it in cloth, hiding it inside her saddlebag. The Dothraki were already overwhelmed by the 3 dragons they had witnessed hatching. If they knew a 4th might come, there'd be whispers, fears, even betrayals. Days passed. They journeyed east, through the Red Waste, heading toward Korth. At night, Daenerys would take out the egg when no one was watching. It pulsed like a heartbeat in her palm. It felt angry, not like the others. Rhaegal, Viserion, and Drogon were wild but loving. This egg felt cold, powerful, almost waiting. One night when the camp slept, she placed the egg in the embers of the fire, just as she had done before. But nothing happened. No flame touched it, no cracking, no sounds. It just sat there, still and silent, soaking in the heat. Jorah noticed her obsession. "You haven't been sleeping," he said one morning. "Is it the dragons?" Daenerys looked away. "Not them," she whispered. "Something else." He tried to press, but she shut him down. "Some things must stay secret, Ser Jorah, even from you." But the egg had begun to change. Cracks were appearing along its shell, tiny at first, glowing red like lava under the surface. And it spoke to her in dreams. She saw a dragon unlike any other, larger than Drogon, with silver fire and black wings stretching across the sky. It burned cities, toppled kings, and spoke in tongues older than old Valyria. It called itself Varelion. It called her Blood Mother. Her dreams grew darker after that. She saw herself sitting on the Iron Throne, alone, the city below her in flames. She saw people kneeling, not out of love, but fear. And in each dream, behind her stood Varelion, whispering things she couldn't remember after waking. By the time they reached Korth, the egg was warm day and night. It no longer needed fire. It was alive. Daenerys began to speak to it. She didn't understand why, but it listened. She could feel it listening. "Will you obey me?" she asked one night. The egg didn't reply, but in her heart she felt a flicker of something. A cold, calculating yes. But something else happened in Korth. A sorcerer noticed the egg. Piet Pri, the warlock with blue lips and hollow eyes, stared at her as if she were carrying a ticking bomb. One night he appeared at her quarters uninvited. "You found the cursed one," he said softly. She narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" "There were always meant to be 4. But the 4th was locked away, hidden for a reason. That egg doesn't hatch life. It hatches vengeance." She laughed bitterly. "You speak in riddles like all warlocks. I don't fear vengeance." "You should," he whispered. "That egg. It remembers the fall of Valyria. It remembers the screams. If it hatches, it won't serve you. It will use you." Daenerys stood, holding the egg tightly. "I am the mother of dragons. All of them are mine. I decide what they become." Piet Pri didn't argue. He only smiled, lips blue and cracked. "Then I hope your heart is stronger than your fire." That night, as Daenerys lay awake, the egg pulsed stronger than ever. It was ready. The night the 4th dragon hatched, the stars were hidden behind thick clouds, and the air in Korth was strange, heavy, as if the city itself held its breath. Daenerys sat alone on a balcony, away from her sleeping followers. The egg was in her lap, wrapped in the black cloth she had kept it hidden in since the desert. It was burning hot now, glowing from within like molten stone. She had never felt this much heat from any of the others before they were born. She placed the egg in front of her, on a stone slab. The moon peeked out from behind a cloud, and in that moment the first crack appeared. Her breath caught. The crack spread fast, thin lines splitting the shell like spiderwebs. Then a sharp snap, and a piece broke off. A gust of silver smoke hissed out. Daenerys leaned in, her eyes wide. The dragon that emerged was not small. It was twice the size her other three had been when they were born. Its scales were deep black, with veins of glowing red running through them, like fire trapped beneath its skin. Its eyes opened, not yellow, not green, but silver, shining like polished steel, cold, piercing, unblinking. It didn't screech like the others. It growled, a low, dangerous sound that sent shivers up her spine. She reached her hand out. "Dracarys," she whispered. It didn't burn anything. It didn't bow. It just stared at her. She felt it again, that same connection she had with Drogon and his brothers. But with this one, it wasn't warmth or love. It was something else, like it recognized her, but didn't trust her. "What are you?" she asked softly. The dragon blinked once, then stretched its wings. They were huge. It flapped once, and the force of the wind knocked over a chair nearby. Daenerys didn't flinch. She stood tall, staring back at the beast. "You are mine," she said firmly, but in her heart she wasn't sure. By morning, the entire camp knew. They couldn't keep it hidden. Servants ran through the city in panic. Whispers spread like wildfire. "The Silver Queen has 4 dragons now." Jorah came to her immediately. His face was pale. "Daenerys." "This one. It's not like the others." "I know," she said. "He doesn't seem to listen. He will," but she was lying to herself. The new dragon, whom she had named Varelion, the name from her dream, didn't eat when she tried to feed it. Didn't come when called. It flew higher, faster, farther than the others. It even growled at Drogon when he got too close. Once, it flew out of the city at night, gone for hours. When it returned, its claws were bloody, and the next morning a trader's caravan outside the walls had been burned to ash. No one could prove it was the dragon, but everyone knew. Daenerys told herself it was just young, untamed, but something in her heart whispered otherwise. Then came the vision. She entered the House of the Undying, as in the timeline we know. She walked through the endless halls of smoke and illusion, saw the same memories and warnings. The Iron Throne covered in snow. The Wall, Khal Drogo and her unborn son. But this time there was something new. At the end of the hall, in the last chamber, she saw herself standing on the throne. The Red Keep was destroyed around her. Fire raged in the skies. But it wasn't Drogon beside her. It was Varelion. He was enormous, easily 5 times the size of Drogon. His eyes were glowing silver, and he roared so loudly the whole castle shook. She turned and looked at her own face in the vision. She was not smiling. She looked empty. When she came out of the vision, she was shaking. Beatrice stood in the shadows. "You saw it," he whispered. She didn't reply. "You think dragons choose queens?" "No, that one was born in death and shadow. It doesn't follow, it consumes." Daenerys stared at him. "Why warn me if you fear it?" The warlock smirked. "Because even I know. Some flames are too wild to hold. If you lose control of that one, it won't be you who burns cities. It'll be him." Later that night, Varelion circled above Korth like a predator. The other dragons stayed close to Daenerys, nervous. Drogon even hissed once, something he'd never done before. Jorah approached her carefully. "What are you going to do?" Daenerys didn't answer. Instead, she walked into the courtyard alone. Varelion landed in front of her, wings spread wide, tail thrashing the ground. He lowered his head to meet her eyes. "You are mine," she said again. "I gave you life. I will not fear you." The dragon stared back. Then, for the first time, it bowed its head. Daenerys stepped forward, placing her hand on his warm, rough snout. For a moment, she felt peace. But deep in the back of her mind, a thought lingered like a shadow she couldn't shake. What if I've just birthed my own destroyer? They left Korth in silence. After the 4th dragon was revealed, no merchant dared offer Daenerys shelter. They feared her now. Not just because of the dragons, but because of what the 4th one had done. The burned caravan outside the city gates had become a warning, a symbol. People no longer called her Khaleesi with pride, but whispered a new name behind closed doors. The Fire Widow, the mother of ruin. Daenerys heard it. She didn't care. Or at least she told herself she didn't. As her small kalasar travelled north, she rode ahead of the group with the dragons circling overhead. Drogon was growing stronger by the day, and the other two followed him as their leader. But Varelion flew alone, always above them, always watching but never near. Sometimes he vanished into the clouds for hours, even days. The others had begun to fear him too. Missandei kept her distance. Jorah avoided speaking of the fourth dragon altogether. Even Grey Worm, trained for death and war, looked at Varelion like he was something unholy. Daenerys still remembered the night she touched his snout. He had bowed to her, yes, but there was no warmth in it. It had been a gesture of respect, not loyalty. Varelion was not her child. He was her equal, maybe worse. Her mirror. The more they journeyed, the more she felt him in her dreams. Her sleep was filled with whispers in Valyrian, though no mouth spoke them. She saw cities falling in flames. She stood in fields of bones. Her hands were always red, dripping with blood she could never wash off. One night she dreamt of Jon Snow. He stood in front of her, sword drawn, eyes filled with sorrow. And behind him Varelion roared, his wings stretching over the broken walls of King's Landing. Then Jon vanished, and she was alone with the beast. He spoke, not in words, but through feeling, and what she felt was this: if you fall, I will rise. She woke up drenched in sweat. That same morning, Viserion returned to camp with a gash across his side, fresh and deep. Rhaegal shrieked in rage, flapping around him, trying to protect him, but it was clear what had happened. Varelion had attacked his own. Daenerys' rage boiled over. She climbed Drogon and flew after him, her hair whipping behind her like silver fire. She found Varelion resting alone on a mountaintop, surrounded by the bones of wild animals. He looked up at her, not surprised. She landed in front of him and shouted, "You will not harm your brothers again." The great black and red dragon stood slowly. Smoke hissed from his nose. He didn't roar. He just stared, blinking slowly like a challenge. Drogon stepped forward beside her, wings flared. For the first time, Daenerys saw her oldest dragon hesitate. He didn't want to fight Varelion. He feared him. "I made you," she shouted, stepping down from Drogon's back. "I gave you life. You are mine." Varelion lowered his head slowly, then let out a deep rumbling growl. The wind around them grew hot. The ground smoked beneath his claws. He didn't bow this time. Instead, he turned and flew away, wings tearing the air like thunder. Daenerys stood alone on the mountain, her heart pounding. She had never felt so powerless. She returned to camp where Missandei was waiting with urgent news. "A raven," she said. "From Westeros." Daenerys opened the scroll, her hands trembling. It was from Varys. "The war in the north has begun. The dead have crossed the wall. Winter is no longer coming. It is here. The north will not survive without dragons." Daenerys read it 3 times. Jon Snow was fighting a war not just for his kingdom, but for the world. And she was still far away, with one of her dragons turning against the rest. Time was running out, but more troubling than that. Her visions were becoming clearer and darker. Every night the same images returned. The Iron Throne surrounded by fire, and Varelion sitting atop it. Not her. A dragon ruling a kingdom of ash. Jorah found her at the edge of camp one evening, alone, staring at the stars. "You don't look like a conqueror," he said softly. She didn't look at him. "What do I look like?" "A woman who's wondering if she's losing control." She laughed bitterly. "I already have. Varelion is more than a dragon. He's something else, something ancient. He knows things I don't." Jorah sat beside her. "Then destroy him." Daenerys turned to him slowly. "Could you destroy your child?" He didn't answer. She closed her eyes. "I have to go to the north. Jon needs me. But if I bring Varelion, I don't know who will die first, the dead or us." Jorah hesitated, then asked, "And if you leave him behind?" She shook her head. "Then I'll have to return, and I might find him sitting on the ruins of everything I ever loved." The fire cracked beside them. Distant roars echoed across the night sky. Daenerys clenched her jaw. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a queen. She felt like a prisoner, chained not by steel, but by the very fire she was born to command. The winds of the north bit harder than Daenerys expected. As her ships reached Dragonstone, the cold came in waves, sharp and unwelcome. She had always known fire, the desert, the pyres, the dragons, but the north was death in the air. Even the sea groaned under the weight of the winter storm. And as they sailed into the narrow bay, her eyes never left the sky, scanning the clouds for Varelion. He hadn't followed them. Not immediately, at least. Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion had flown ahead. They landed on the cliffs of Dragonstone, roaring against the wind, wings spread wide. The people on the shore stared in awe. Jon Snow, waiting near the gates with Davos, barely blinked when the dragons arrived. But even he asked, "Where's the fourth?" Daenerys didn't answer. Jon stepped forward. "I thought there were 4 now." She turned her gaze away. "He's unpredictable." Jon didn't press further, but his silence said enough. He had already seen things beyond understanding. The White Walkers, the Night King. Another dragon should have been a blessing, but even Jon could feel the shadow behind her. 2 nights passed before Varelion came. It was just before dawn. The sky was dark purple, the stars fading into clouds. A thunderous roar split the heavens, and then the wind shifted. The temperature dropped, and even the dragons below stirred uneasily. Varelion came down from the sky like a storm. His wings didn't flap with grace, they tore the air apart. He landed on the peak of Dragonstone's cliff, above the others, his body casting a massive shadow over the courtyard. His silver eyes scanned everything, the soldiers, the guards, even Jon, like a king returning to his throne. The other dragons snarled. Drogon flared his wings, but didn't attack. Varelion didn't return the greeting. He didn't roar. He didn't move. He just stared. Daenerys stepped out slowly. Jon watched him. "That's not a dragon," he said quietly. "What is he, then?" she asked. Jon turned toward her. "Something older. Something wrong." Daenerys said nothing. Later that day, war plans were laid. The North was preparing for battle. The Night King had already taken the last hearth. Winterfell was next. They didn't have time to argue over politics anymore. Jon spoke to her in private. "We need your dragons. All of them." "You have them," she said. He looked at her closely. "Do we?" She didn't respond. The first test came during the flight to Winterfell. Daenerys led Drogon through the snowy sky, flanked by Viserion and Rhaegal. Varelion flew high above them all, a shadow among the clouds. They flew low past villages already emptied, fields dead under the snow. At one point, they spotted a lone wight wandering across a frozen river. Jon gave the signal. Daenerys sent Rhaegal down to burn it. But as Rhaegal opened his jaws, a blast of silver fire exploded from above, hitting the white and the ice, and Rhaegal too. The green dragon screeched, spiraling in pain as his wing caught flame. He managed to stay in the air, but barely. Daenerys turned upward, furious. "Varelion!" But the dark dragon was already gone, lost in the sky. When they landed outside Winterfell, the northern soldiers were in awe of the dragons, until they saw Rhaegal's burned wing. Whispers began to spread again. The northerners already distrusted Daenerys. Now they feared her even more. Arya saw it first. She stood beside Jon and looked up at Daenerys, not with hate, but something colder, pity. "He's not yours," Arya said bluntly. Daenerys turned sharply. "You know nothing about dragons." "I know enough about weapons," Arya replied. "And that one isn't a beast. He's a blade, and he's choosing what to cut." Jon had had enough. That night he met her in the crypts. The quiet between them was thick. They didn't speak of love or thrones or loyalty, only power. He tried to burn Rhaegal. "He didn't mean to," she said. "He doesn't understand control yet." "Or maybe he understands it too well," Jon replied. "You don't see it, do you? The people aren't scared of your dragon. They're scared of what he's turning you into." Her hands clenched. "I came to save them, then control him. Prove you still can." She looked at him, her voice trembling. "And if I can't?" Jon didn't answer. The next morning, Daenerys took to the sky alone, chasing Varelion to the cliffs outside the Dreadfort ruins. He was waiting there, crouched like a beast ready to pounce. She landed on Drogon a few feet away, eyes locked with him. "Do you want to rule?" she shouted against the wind. "Is that it? Are you trying to take what's mine?" Varelion moved closer, wings dragging across the stone. His growl rumbled the earth. "I brought you into this world. I gave you my fire." The dragon's eyes narrowed. Then, for the first time, she heard him, not in words, not in sound, but deep in her head. A thought, a whisper. "You were the fire, but I am the storm." And in that moment, she realized something that chilled her more than the winter wind. Varelion wasn't just another dragon. He was Valeria's last sin, a creature not born to serve or follow, but to finish what the doom had started. Daenerys sat frozen on Drogon's back, heart pounding. She had brought something ancient into the world, and now it was awake. The fires of war lit the night sky outside Winterfell. Jon, Daenerys, Arya, Sansa, all of them stood on the battlements, watching the White Walkers approach in the distance. An army of death stretched across the frozen land, endless and silent, crawling toward them like a tide that would never turn back. Dragons soared overhead, Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion. Their screeches echoed through the night, shaking the very stones of Winterfell. The people below took hope in them despite their fear. But Varelion, he didn't fly with the others. He circled the distant clouds above the undead, far higher than the rest. Watching, waiting. "He's not protecting us," Arya said beside Daenerys. "He's watching the dead, like he's trying to decide who he hates more." Daenerys didn't answer. She had barely slept in days. Her skin was pale, and her eyes held a weight that even queens shouldn't carry. Jon came up behind her. "It's tonight." "I know. He won't follow the plan." "I know that too." Jon looked up at the sky. "Then why did you bring him?" Daenerys didn't answer for a long time. Then finally, "Because I don't know what side he's on. And I'd rather have him where I can see him than hiding in the dark." But even she didn't believe that anymore. When the dead finally reached the walls, Winterfell shook with the sound of war. The dragons dived first, unleashing firestorms across the front lines. White screamed as they burned, bones cracking under dragonfire. Jon fought below with the men, sword flashing in the night, cutting down undead as fast as they rose. Arya moved like a shadow, silent and deadly, dancing through the chaos. Daenerys flew above them all on Drogon, raining fire where the lines thinned. She shouted, commanded, directed the battle from the sky, but then it happened. The clouds parted. The Night King appeared, on the back of the undead Viserion, the real one. In this version of events, Daenerys had 4 dragons, but the Night King had stolen one from another timeline. Or perhaps a cursed echo of Viserion, a twisted mockery. His blue fire clashed with Drogon's red, lighting the sky with a war of colors. The dragons twisted in the air, clawing and biting. Rhaegal tried to assist, but was nearly torn apart. Then Varelion came down like a comet. His roar cracked the clouds. His body slammed into the Night King's dragon with such force that the undead beast crashed into the trees below. The people below cheered. For a moment, they believed Varelion had come to save them. Daenerys smiled. Just a little. But then Varelion turned on Drogon. Without warning, he struck his brother in the side, claws tearing across Drogon's wing. Drogon roared in pain, nearly losing control. Daenerys held tight. "No, stop!" Varelion ignored her. He didn't fight like a wild beast. He fought like a king reclaiming a throne, deliberate, powerful, intelligent. Drogon tried to defend himself, but he was weaker, slower, less cruel. Rhaegal flew in again, trying to protect them, and Varelion unleashed his silver fire. It wasn't like normal dragon fire. It didn't just burn, it erased. Where the flame touched, flesh didn't just melt, it vanished. Armor turned to dust. The ground turned to glass. Rhaegal was hit across the chest. He fell from the sky, screaming, crashing into the battlefield with a deafening thud. Daenerys screamed his name. Jon saw it too, from below. His heart sank. This wasn't just a rogue dragon, this was something else. A weapon the world wasn't ready for. The Night King, still alive, stood on the ridge, watching all of it unfold. For the first time, a strange expression flickered across his face. Recognition. He knew Varelion. Not personally, but by legend. Some stories are older than even death. In a horrifying moment, Daenerys understood. Varelion didn't just come from Valyria. He came from before it, a time before dragons were tamed, before men rode fire, before names like Targaryen meant anything. He was the original sin of flame, buried, hidden, forgotten, until she set him free. And now, he had chosen his own war. Below, Jon made a desperate plan. He gathered Arya and the Hound. We need to kill the Night King now, before Varelion joins him or kills us all. But the dragons, Arya began. Forget the dragons, Jon snapped. We have no dragons. We have monsters. Daenerys, still in the air, fought to regain control. She flew Drogon toward Varelion again, screaming his name in Valyrian, commanding him to stand down. This time, he stopped. He hovered in the air in front of her, wings flapping, silver eyes staring deep into hers. No growl, no fire, just silence. She spoke, her voice shaking. I raised you. I protected you. I believed in you. Varelion blinked once. Then, in a terrifying moment of clarity, she heard the voice again. And now you fear me. He flew upward and vanished into the clouds. Daenerys landed. Drogon near the walls of Winterfell, dismounted and collapsed to her knees. Her people ran to her, guards shouting, trying to pull her inside the gates, but all she could hear was the final whisper in her head. You lit the flame, Mother. Now burn with it. And in the sky, a silver shape circled the moon, higher than any dragon had ever flown. Winterfell was fire and ice. The flames from Drogon still flickered across the ramparts, while frost from the Night King spread through the courtyard like a disease. Screams echoed in every direction, men, women, and whites. The sky was a battlefield of smoke and dragonfire, but above it all, the silver shape of Varelion circled like a god, watching insects fight below. Jon Snow ran through the halls of the keep, blood on his sword and ice in his lungs. He had to reach Bran. The Night King was near. Arya had disappeared, no doubt hunting shadows, and Daenerys had vanished behind the ruins of a broken tower, where she'd collapsed after watching Rhaegal die and Varelion betray her. Even Drogon was wounded. His wing was torn, and black blood stained the snow wherever he limped. Daenerys tried to stand, but her legs shook. The cold had finally touched her, not just in her bones, but in her soul. Her fire was fading. She could still hear Varelion. He spoke in thoughts, not words, not in High Valyrian, but something older, something deeper. A voice that sounded like thunder wrapped in shadow. The world was never yours. It was mine before your kind walked upright. She pressed her palms to her ears, crying out. Stop, but he didn't. You think yourself queen? You rule nothing. You borrowed my flame. Now I return to claim it. Then with a rush of wind and an explosion of frost, the Night King appeared at the gates. He rode his undead Viserion again, the beast's bones creaking under the weight of death itself. Bran waited in the Godswood as still as ever, while Jon Snow stood between him and the coming storm. But it wasn't Jon the Night King was looking at, it was Varelion. He raised a hand, not to kill, not to command, but to acknowledge. Like one dark king greeting another, and Varelion landed. The snow exploded beneath his claws. His wings folded, his silver eyes burning bright. Everyone froze. Even the white stopped. A silence more terrible than death fell over Winterfell. Jon turned slowly toward the dragon. No, he whispered. Not you too. Daenerys limped toward them, her voice raw. Don't do this. I created you. I raised you. Varelion stared at her, then a slow bow, but not of submission, of farewell. He was choosing. The Night King stepped forward, slowly. No words passed between them, just a terrible understanding. two ancient powers, drawn to each other like ice and fire. The sky turned dark, the moon eclipsed by ash. Then the Night King reached out his hand and touched Varelion, and the world shattered. A scream tore from the heavens, not from a human throat but from the earth itself. The ground cracked, fire burst from beneath the snow, and silver lightning streaked across the sky. Varelion's wings opened, wider than ever, and a blast of pure white flame erupted from his mouth, but not toward the whites, toward everyone. The first to die were the Unsullied. They didn't scream, they didn't have time. Their bodies vanished in the light. Then the Dothraki burned as they ran. Then the walls, then the towers. Varelion didn't just breathe fire, he unleashed destruction. Jon grabbed Bran and pulled him into the crypts. Arya was already there, dragging an injured hound behind her. Sansa and Tyrion sheltered with the women and children. Daenerys stood still. Drogon howled behind her, wounded and afraid. She turned to look at Varelion one last time. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not from fear, but guilt. "I made you," she whispered, "and I let you live." The dragon opened his mouth again, but just before he released the final blast, Drogon lunged. With one final roar, Drogon, a child, her first, slammed into Varelion from behind, biting his throat and dragging him into the air. The two titans fought in the sky, clawing, burning, bleeding. Black blood poured like rain. Then, higher and higher, they rose and exploded in a cloud of silver and red fire. The shockwave flattened what remained of Winterfell's walls. When the dust settled, only one dragon fell back to the earth. Drogon, his wings broken. His body shaking, but alive. Varelion was gone. Daenerys ran to Drogon, sobbing. He looked at her, weak but breathing. She knelt beside him, whispering, "You came back." The next morning, the fires were still burning, but the dead were gone. The Night King, whatever deal he had tried to make with Varelion, had failed or been consumed by something even darker. His body had vanished. The whites with him, Winterfell was ruins. Half the army was gone. But the world had not ended. Jon stood on the ramparts watching the sky. "Is it over?" Arya asked. Jon didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "No, but the worst part of it is." In the weeks that followed, Daenerys said little. She refused to speak of Varelion again. She no longer dreamed. The fire in her voice was quieter, not gone, but gentler. When Jon finally asked her what she saw in Varelion, what she felt, she said only one thing. "He was what I could have become, if I had no love left." And with that, she walked away. Later, Drogon lifted her into the sky again, carrying her south, back toward the throne. But this time, her fire would burn slower and colder.